Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The moonlit cityscape reflected on the office tower's windows, casting an ethereal glow onto the deserted lobby. Inside, the pulse of emergency lights flickered, their electronic heartbeat echoing through the cavernous halls. Tonight, this urban monolith belonged exclusively to its guardian. John stood vigilant, his steady footsteps echoing with each patrol. He was a tall, once sturdy man, but was now so much thinner, wrapped in a uniform several sizes too big. Its loose fabric concealed many secrets, including the medications altering his body. His isolation on this shift, a blessing. Dawn approached, and with it came Justice's favorite part of his week. As the night guard completing a 12-hour shift, he was alone after his colleagues clocked out at 5. The day shift wouldn't arrive until 7. These precious hours belonged to Nina.
All clear on level 12.
Justice spoke into his radio, completing the formality even though no one was listening. His voice still carried the deep timbre he'd grown to resent, though it had softened slightly over the past months. The storage closet on the 14th floor remained untouched by the cleaning staff. It had been marked as electrical equipment storage years ago, though it contained nothing but a few dusty boxes. Justice had added his own box 3 months earlier, labeled Circuit Breaker Supplies in neat handwriting. Inside that box lay Nina's things. Justice slipped his key into the lock and entered the small room, closing the door behind him. His heart quickened as he knelt beside the box, removing the lid with reverent care. The navy blue fit and flare dress was folded perfectly, just as he'd left it. Beneath it lay the strappy white sandals and a makeup bag filled with carefully selected products.
Good morning,
he whispered to the items, a ritual he'd developed over the weeks. His fingers trembled slightly as they brushed against the soft fabric of the dress. The building's employee lounge had a shower, installed years ago when the company briefly experimented with encouraging bicycle commuting. Justice made use of it now, washing away the night's work. He'd already shaved meticulously before his shift, knowing tonight would be a Nina morning. After drying off, he returned to the storage room. The transformation began with a layer of foundation, carefully blended to soften the angles of his face. Concealer hid the shadow of facial hair that would return by evening. A hint of blush brightened his cheeks. His brown eyes, the one feature he'd always liked about himself, looked larger, more expressive once framed with mascara and a touch of brown eyeshadow. The soft pink lipstick was the final touch. Justice, now Nina, pressed her lips together, distributing the color evenly. The woman in the small, compact mirror smiled back at her. Brown hair cascaded in soft waves just past her shoulders, the high-quality wig secured firmly in place. The navy dress slipped over her head, falling gracefully to just above her knees. The hormones had begun creating subtle curves, and the dress's design enhanced what nature and medicine had started. The white sandals completed the look, adding 3 inches to her height and changing her gait to one more befitting Nina. A spritz of perfume, subtle, floral with hints of vanilla, and the transformation was complete. Where Justice had stood an hour earlier, Nina now examined her reflection in the full-length mirror she'd mounted inside the storage room door. "There you are," she whispered to herself, smiling at the woman who gazed back. Nina gathered her things, placing Justice's uniform and shoes into the box. Everything else would return tonight, before her shift began. The makeup would be removed, the wig stored, the dress folded. Justice would emerge once more. But for now, for these precious morning hours, Nina lived. The side exit of the building led to a quiet street that wouldn't begin seeing foot traffic for another hour. Nina had timed her departures precisely, knowing the patterns of the neighborhood. The security cameras had a 3-minute blind spot during system reboot at 6:30 a.m., a flaw she'd discovered during her second month on the job, but had never reported. Those 3 minutes provided her escape route. Today, she planned to visit a cafe across town, a place where neither Justice nor Nina had ever been. Each excursion tested her confidence a little further, pushed her boundaries a little wider. The morning air felt cool against her skin as she stepped outside. Nina locked the door behind her, slipping the key into her purse, a simple black shoulder bag that matched everything. Her steps were measured and graceful in the sandals she'd practiced walking in for weeks before daring to wear them outside. The subway station was 3 blocks away. Nina kept her eyes forward, her posture straight but relaxed. The first few times she'd ventured out, she'd been terrified someone would see through her appearance, would point and laugh, or worse. But those mornings had passed without incident, and with each successful outing, her confidence grew. The train was nearly empty this early. Nina took a seat near the door, crossing her legs at the ankles as she'd observed other women doing. Her hands rested in her lap, nails painted a pale pink that matched her lipstick. "Morning," nodded an elderly man with a newspaper, the only other occupant in her train car. "Good morning," Nina replied, her voice soft and higher than Justice's natural tone. She'd practiced for months, recording herself and playing it back, training her vocal cords to produce a sound that matched the person she knew herself to be. The man returned to his newspaper without a second glance. Nina exhaled slowly. Each interaction, no matter how brief, validated her existence. She wasn't just playing dress-up, she was living authentically, if only for a few stolen hours. The cafe was called Sunrise Brew, a fitting name for her morning adventures. It sat on a corner with large windows that caught the early light. By the time Nina arrived, the morning rush had just begun, with suited professionals queuing for their caffeine fix before heading to their offices. Nina joined the line, studying the menu board, though she already knew what she wanted. The routine brought comfort, being just another person starting their day with coffee and breakfast. "What can I get you?" asked the barista, a woman with curly hair pulled into a messy bun. "A medium vanilla latte and a croissant, please," Nina ordered, her voice steady. "Name for the order?" Nina. The simple exchange filled her with quiet joy. To be addressed as herself, to say her own name aloud in public, these small moments sustained her through the hours when she had to be Justice. Nina took her receipt and moved to the side, waiting for her order. The cafe buzzed with morning energy, people talking, milk steaming, the clatter of plates and cups. She belonged here among them, just another woman starting her day. "Latte for Nina!" She collected her order and found a small table by the window. The warm cup felt good between her hands as she watched the world outside coming to life. Nina took a sip, leaving a faint pink lip print on the cup's edge. 2 women at the next table were deep in conversation about an upcoming work presentation. Nina listened, not out of interest in their topic, but to absorb their mannerisms, the natural way they moved and spoke. She'd learned so much from observation, incorporating small gestures and habits into Nina's personality. The croissant flaked beneath her fingers as she took a small bite. Nina ate delicately, mindful of her lipstick. These practiced behaviors had become second nature during her mornings as herself. Sometimes she caught herself using Nina's mannerisms during Justice's shifts, a dangerous slip that she quickly corrected. Her phone vibrated with a calendar alert, a reminder that Nina's time was limited. She needed to be back at the building by 9:30, changed and gone before the cleaning crew arrived to service the upper floors. Justice would need to be home by 10 o'clock, ready to sleep through the day before the next night shift began. Nina savored the last of her coffee, dabbed her lips with a napkin, and gathered her things. The morning sun had fully risen now, illuminating the city streets with golden light. She walked unhurriedly back to the subway, drawing out these moments of freedom. On the return journey, the train was considerably more crowded. Nina stood, holding the overhead rail, surrounded by commuters. A man in a business suit offered her his seat with a polite gesture. "Thank you," she smiled, accepting the kindness that was extended to her as a woman, something Justice had never experienced. The businessman nodded.
Beautiful day, isn't it?
"Perfect," Nina agreed, feeling the truth of it despite the ticking clock of her reality. Back near the office building, Nina took a detour through a small park. Few people were there this early, just a couple of joggers and someone walking a dog. She sat on a bench for a few precious minutes, feeling the sun on her skin, existing in the world as herself. These moments sustained her. Each time she ventured out as Nina, the divide between her two lives became simultaneously more bearable and more painful. The freedom of being Nina highlighted the constraints of living as Justice. The side entrance to the building awaited her return. Nina checked her watch. Right on schedule. The security cameras would be completing their morning diagnostic cycle in exactly 4 minutes, providing her window to slip back inside, undetected. When the moment came, she moved quickly through the door, locking it behind her. The familiar hallways felt different when walked in sandals rather than security boots. Nina hurried to the 14th floor, to the storage closet that served as her sanctuary. Inside, she carefully removed the wig, placing it on its stand. The dress was folded, the sandals tucked away. Makeup remover wiped away Nina's face, revealing Justice underneath. The transformation reversed felt like watching a beautiful sunset fade into darkness, necessary for the cycle of days, but tinged with melancholy. Justice pulled on his regular clothes, jeans, and a dark gray t-shirt. His security uniform was packed away in his backpack. As he closed the box containing Nina's belongings, he allowed himself one last look before sealing it away.
"See you soon,"
he whispered. The apartment Justice returned to was small but neat. Located in a quiet building where neighbors minded their business, it provided the privacy he needed. Most residents were either elderly or worked long hours, meaning few were around to notice his unusual schedule or the gradual changes in his appearance. He drew the blackout curtains, blocking the morning light that would normally signal wakefulness. Night shift workers lived in perpetual opposition to the natural world, sleeping while others worked, working while others slept. For Justice, this inverted existence provided cover for his transition. Few people paid close attention to someone they rarely saw in daylight. Before sleep claimed him, Justice opened his laptop and checked his savings account. The balance was growing steadily, each month bringing him closer to his goal. The security job paid reasonably well, especially with night differential, and he lived frugally. The fund had a name: New Life. It represented everything: the legal name change, the remaining surgeries he wanted, and eventually a move to a new city where no one knew Justice, where he could live as Nina full-time. The morning Nina had breakfast at Sunrise Brew was the first of many such outings. Over the following weeks, she grew bolder, venturing further from the office building, staying out longer. She developed a routine, different cafes on different days, occasionally browsing shops that opened early. Nina purchased small items, a bracelet, a scarf, earrings for the ears she'd had pierced during a rare day off. Each possession belonged solely to her, never to Justice. One Thursday morning, 3 months after her first breakfast outing, Nina sat at an outdoor table at a cafe she'd come to favor. The early autumn air carried a slight chill, but the coffee warmed her hands through the paper cup. Her brown hair caught the sunlight, the color rich against the deep green cardigan she wore over her navy dress. "Is this seat taken?" Nina looked up to find a woman gesturing to the empty chair across from her. The stranger appeared to be in her mid-30s, dressed in tailored black pants and a crisp white blouse, a portfolio case tucked under her arm. "Not at all," Nina replied, moving her purse from the table to make room. "Thanks so much. Every other table is full, and I've got a meeting to prepare for." The woman set down her own coffee and opened her portfolio, revealing architectural drawings. "I'm Renee, by the way." "Nina," came the response, the name feeling more natural on her lips with each passing day. Renee shuffled through her papers, then paused and looked up. "I'm sorry, I'm not being very social, am I? Barging in and immediately ignoring you." Nina smiled. "It's fine, you seem busy." "Presentation in an hour. These clients are particularly demanding." Renee sighed, then studied Nina more carefully. "Do you work around here?" The question triggered a momentary panic. Nina's fictional life hadn't been developed to withstand much scrutiny. "Not in this neighborhood. I'm just passing through." "Lucky you, having a leisurely morning coffee while the rest of us rush around." Renee's tone was light, envious rather than suspicious. Nina relaxed slightly. "I work nights," she said, a half-truth that felt safer than a complete fabrication. "This is my evening in a way." "Night shift? What do you do?" "Security," Nina answered before she could stop herself, immediately regretting drawing any connection between Nina and Justice. Renee seemed impressed. "That must be interesting, and probably peaceful, depending on where you work." "Most nights are quiet," Nina agreed, steering away from specifics. "What kind of architecture do you do?" she asked, changing the subject. The conversation flowed easily after that, with Renee describing her current project, the renovation of a historic building into modern apartments. Nina listened, asking questions that kept the focus on Renee rather than herself. "I should get going," Renee said eventually, gathering her materials. "It was nice meeting you, Nina. I'm here most Thursdays around this time, if you ever want coffee company again." Nina nodded, surprised by the friendly overture. That would be nice. After Renee left, Nina sat with her cooling coffee, processing what had just happened. She'd had a normal conversation with a stranger, one who saw her only as Nina, with no knowledge of Justice's existence. The experience left her feeling both exhilarated and unsettled. The following Thursday, Nina found herself returning to the same cafe, arriving slightly earlier than the week before. She told herself it was merely a pleasant spot, not that she was hoping to see Renee again. When the architect appeared, portfolio in hand and wearing a deep burgundy blazer over black pants, Nina felt a flutter of recognition that surprised her with its intensity. "Nina, you're here again!" Renee smiled broadly, approaching her table. "May I join you?" "Please do." Nina gestured to the chair across from her. Thus began a new pattern. Thursday mornings became their unofficial meeting time. Nina found herself sharing more of herself with Renee, carefully edited versions of truth woven with necessary fictions. She spoke of her interest in photography, real, her love of classic films, real, and her distant family in another state. Partly true. Justice's family was indeed distant, both geographically and emotionally, having largely withdrawn when he began his transition. Renee, in turn, shared stories of difficult clients, her passion for sustainable design, and her recent divorce from a husband who had never supported her career ambitions. "He wanted me to be decorative," Renee explained during their fourth meeting, stirring her latte absently. "He'd show me off at company functions, but when I wanted to work late on a project, suddenly I wasn't being a good wife." Nina nodded sympathetically. "Some people can't handle strong women." "Exactly!" Renee pointed her spoon at Nina. "You get it. That's what I like about you." The words warmed Nina unexpectedly. Friendship had been a casualty of Justice's transition. Old friends had drifted away as he withdrew to focus on becoming Nina, and new friendships were difficult to form when living a divided life. By their sixth Thursday meeting, Nina realized she had begun planning her week around these coffee dates. She took extra care with her appearance on Thursdays, making sure her brown hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. "I have to cancel next week," Renee announced one morning. "Site visit in Chicago. I'll be gone Tuesday through Friday." Nina nodded, hiding her disappointment. "No problem. The Thursday after, then. Actually," Renee reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. "I was wondering if you might want to meet for dinner sometime? When I get back? There's this new restaurant I've been wanting to try." Nina froze, the card halfway to her purse. Dinner meant evening. Evening meant Justice would be working. Their carefully constructed schedule had no room for Nina to exist at night. "I usually work evenings," she said carefully. "Night shift, remember?" "Right, of course." Renee looked briefly disappointed. "Maybe a weekend breakfast sometime." Nina calculated quickly. She could potentially extend her Thursday morning outing once in a while, but a full social life as Nina remained impossible while Justice kept his job. "I'd like that," she said finally. "Let me check my schedule when you get back." The exchange left Nina feeling both thrilled and trapped. Her friendship with Renee represented everything she wanted, normal human connection as her true self, and everything she couldn't fully have yet. That night, during his security rounds, Justice found himself distracted by thoughts of Renee and the invitation. The building seemed more confining than usual, the hours stretching endlessly before him. The security uniform felt like a costume now, far more than Nina's dresses ever did. Near dawn, Justice made a decision. He sat at the security desk and opened the company's internal job posting website. There, listed among various positions, was an opening for a day shift security officer at one of their downtown properties. The posting had appeared yesterday. Justice had noticed it during his system checks, but hadn't given it serious thought until now. Working days would mean giving up these private mornings as Nina. It would mean being more visible as Justice during his transition. But it would also mean evenings and weekends free. Time that could belong to Nina. Time for dinners, movies, normal social activities. Time for friends like Renee. Justice submitted his application for transfer before he could reconsider. The system confirmed receipt with a sterile automated message. "Your application has been received. Human Resources will contact you if your qualifications match our needs." The following days passed in a state of nervous anticipation. Justice performed his duties mechanically, his mind elsewhere. Nina's Thursday outing was skipped, with Renee away in Chicago. The storage closet remained locked, her things untouched. On Monday morning, as Justice was preparing to sleep after his shift, his phone rang. The display showed the company's HR department. "Mr. Mercer, this is Patricia from Human Resources. I'm calling about your transfer application." Justice sat on the edge of his bed, heart pounding. "Yes?" "We'd like to offer you the position at our downtown location. The hours would be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Would that schedule work for you?" "Yes," Justice answered, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. "That would be perfect." "Excellent. Can you start next Monday? That would give you time to complete your current rotation and have a couple of days off for the transition." The word transition made Justice smile at its unintended double meaning. "Monday works well. Thank you." After ending the call, Justice lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Change was coming, faster than he'd planned, but in the direction he'd always intended. The day shift position paid slightly more. Combined with not having to maintain 2 separate wardrobes in separate locations, his new life fund would grow even faster. That night at work, Justice submitted his formal acceptance of the transfer and received his new schedule. His current supervisor expressed mild surprise, but no real concern about losing him to the day shift. "Most people go the other direction," the supervisor commented. "They start days and move to nights for the differential. But hey, if you want to see the sun again, who am I to judge?" Justice smiled noncommittally. If only his supervisor knew that the decision had nothing to do with seeing the sun and everything to do with living authentically. His final week on night shift passed quickly. Justice used the time to carefully remove Nina's things from the storage closet, bringing them home piece by piece. The navy dress and white sandals were the last to make the journey, carefully packed in his backpack on his final morning. Standing in the empty storage closet, Justice felt a momentary pang of loss. This small space had been Nina's birthplace in many ways. Here, she had taken her first steps, practiced her voice, prepared for her first ventures into the world. But the loss was temporary. Nina would have new spaces now, not hidden closets, but the open world. The weekend between jobs gave Justice time to reorganize his apartment. Nina's things, previously kept in boxes under his bed, now hung in his closet alongside his increasingly sparse male wardrobe. The wig stand sat proudly on his dresser, the brown hair catching sunlight from the window. Monday morning arrived with both anxiety and excitement. Justice dressed carefully in his security uniform, now sized to better fit his changing body. The hormones had continued their subtle work over the months, softening his jaw, redistributing body fat, gradually reshaping him toward Nina. The downtown building was larger than his previous post, with more staff and higher foot traffic. Justice was introduced to a team of 6 other security officers, given a tour of the facility, and assigned his station. The work itself was similar, though the environment felt vastly different in daylight, filled with employees and visitors. "Mercer, right?" One of his new colleagues, a broad-shouldered man named Rodriguez, approached during lunch break. "Former night shift?" Justice nodded, unwrapping his sandwich. "At the Westbrook building." "Thought so. You've got that night shift pallor." Rodriguez laughed. "Don't worry. The sun will fix that. What made you switch?" Justice had prepared for such questions. "Looking for a better social life. Hard to maintain friendships when you work, while everyone else sleeps." Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. "Makes sense. Well, welcome to days.
We go for drinks sometimes after Friday shifts, if you're interested.
Thanks, Justice replied, aware that such invitations would require careful navigation. His appearance was changing weekly now, becoming less Justice and more Nina with each passing day. He would need to find a balance between professional courtesy and self-protection. The first week of day shifts exhausted him. Justice's body rebelled against the schedule change, and the constant interaction with others drained his introverted nature. But by Friday, he had settled into a routine and learned the rhythm of the building. More importantly, he had evenings free now. Nina's time was no longer limited to stolen pre-dawn hours. On Saturday, Nina dressed with particular care. The navy dress, her first and still her favorite, was paired with a light cardigan against the autumn chill. The brown wig was styled in loose waves, and her makeup applied with practiced precision. The text message from Renee had come Thursday night. Back from Chicago. Breakfast Sunday at Wildflower Cafe? 10 a.m.? Nina had replied immediately. Looking forward to it. Now, standing before her mirror, Nina assessed herself critically. The hormones had worked subtle magic over the months. Her face softer, her body's contours gradually shifting. The changes weren't dramatic enough for Justice's colleagues to question, especially since they were newly acquainted, but they were significant to Nina's confidence. Sunday morning dawned clear and cool. Nina arrived at the Wildflower Cafe 15 minutes early, selecting a table near the window. Unlike their usual coffee shop, this was a proper restaurant, busy with weekend brunch crowds. Nina felt a momentary flutter of anxiety. More people meant more potential scrutiny, but she pushed it aside. This was her life now. Nina during personal time, Justice only during work hours. Renee arrived precisely at 10, waving as she spotted Nina through the window. She wore fitted jeans and an oversized cream sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual work-appropriate style. You look nice, Renee commented as she sat down. I've only ever seen you in that navy dress. The green suits you. Nina smoothed the fabric of her dark green wrap dress self-consciously. Thank you. I thought it was time for something different. I missed our Thursday coffee, Renee said, opening her menu. Chicago was productive but exhausting. The client kept changing requirements mid-presentation. That sounds frustrating, Nina sympathized, relieved at how easily they fell back into conversation. They ordered avocado toast for Renee, vegetable omelet for Nina, and settled into sharing stories of their week. Nina spoke of her job change, describing it vaguely as a shift in hours that allowed for a more normal social schedule. That explains why you're available for Sunday brunch, Renee observed. I'm glad. To be honest, I was starting to think you might be avoiding social invitations. Nina felt a flush of guilt at how close to the truth Renee had come. Not avoiding, she corrected gently. Just limited by circumstances that have recently changed. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Nina found herself relaxing more fully than she had in months. This, sitting in a restaurant in daylight, having a normal meal with a friend, represented everything she had been working toward. Would you like to see a movie next weekend? Renee asked, as they finished their meals. There's a revival showing of Breakfast at Tiffany's at the Grand Theater downtown. I'd love that, Nina replied, the words coming easily now. Her new schedule made such outings possible. Justice worked weekdays. Weekends belonged entirely to Nina. As they parted outside the restaurant, Renee surprised Nina with a quick hug. I'm glad we met, she said simply. See you Saturday for the movie? 7 o'clock showing? Nina nodded, returning the hug somewhat awkwardly. Saturday at 7. Walking home, Nina felt lighter than she had in years. The path forward was becoming clearer. The day job meant Justice could work without drawing attention to his gradually changing appearance for a while longer, while Nina could build a real social life in the evenings and on weekends. The New Life Fund continued to grow. Within 6 months, Nina calculated, she would have enough saved for the legal name change, the remaining procedures she wanted, and the first few months' rent in a new city. A fresh start where Justice could be permanently retired, and Nina could live full-time. The movie outing with Renee became dinner the following weekend, then a gallery opening the weekend after that. Nina's wardrobe expanded. A red dress for the gallery, black slacks, and a silky top for dinner, comfortable jeans and sweaters for casual outings. Through it all, Justice continued working days, keeping largely to himself, offering minimal personal information to colleagues. The hormones continued their gradual work. He bound his developing chest for work, wore increasingly loose uniform shirts, and kept conversations professional and brief. 3 months into this new arrangement, Nina sat on her couch on a Sunday evening, reflecting on the weekend just past. She and Renee had spent much of it together, a farmer's market on Saturday morning, dinner that evening, and a long walk through the botanical gardens that afternoon. Their friendship had deepened into something Nina cherished. Renee knew nothing of Justice, seeing only Nina, exactly as Nina wished to be seen. Yet this created an uncomfortable distance. Meaningful friendship required honesty, and Nina was withholding the most fundamental truth of her existence. The question of how much to reveal and when preoccupied Nina throughout the following week. Justice performed his security duties mechanically, his mind elsewhere. By Friday, Nina had made her decision. The coffee shop where they had first met seemed the appropriate location. Nina arrived early, securing their usual table. Her hands trembled slightly as she waited, the brown hair of her wig catching the morning light through the window. "You sounded serious on the phone," Renee said as she sat down, foregoing her usual greeting. "Is everything okay?" Nina took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you, something important about me that you should know if we're going to continue being friends." Renee's expression grew concerned. "You can tell me anything, Nina." The words came slowly at first, then in a rush. Nina explained about her transition, about living part-time as herself while working as Justice. She talked about the hormones, the gradual changes, the plans for the future. Throughout, she watched Renee's face carefully, searching for signs of rejection or disgust. Instead, she found compassion and growing understanding. "So, that's why you were so limited in when we could meet at first," Renee said when Nina finished speaking. "It wasn't that you were avoiding me." Nina nodded, relief washing through her at Renee's matter-of-fact response. "I wanted to tell you sooner, but I was afraid of losing your friendship." Renee reached across the table and covered Nina's hand with her own. "Thank you for trusting me with this. It doesn't change how I see you. You're still Nina, the woman I've come to know these past months." The acceptance brought unexpected tears to Nina's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Can I ask what your plans are?" Renee inquired gently. "You mentioned saving for a fresh start." Nina explained her timeline, the legal name change already in process, the procedures scheduled for the coming months, the plan to move to a new city by summer.
A new city?
Renee frowned slightly. "You're leaving?" "I thought it would be easier. Starting completely fresh where no one knew Justice." Renee was quiet for a moment, considering. "That makes sense," she said finally. "But I hope you know you don't have to leave to be accepted as Nina. Not by me, anyway. The words warmed Nina unexpectedly. I'm still figuring things out, she admitted. The plan was made when I had no connections here. No one who knew the real me. Well, now you do, Renee said simply. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. The conversation shifted then, moving to lighter topics, but something fundamental had changed. Nina felt truly seen for the first time, her whole self acknowledged and accepted. In the months that followed, Nina's dual existence began to shift increasingly toward her true identity. Justice gave notice at his security job, citing personal reasons for his departure. His colleagues organized a modest farewell gathering, which he attended briefly, accepting their good wishes with quiet gratitude. The legal name change was finalized 2 weeks later. Nina Mercer existed officially now, no longer just in private moments and weekend outings. Justice's identification was retired, replaced with cards and documents bearing Nina's name and an updated photograph that reflected her true self. Nina found work at a small photography studio on the other side of the city, building on the interest she had cultivated during her transition. The position allowed her to work behind the camera rather than in front of people, giving her time to grow more comfortable in her new full-time identity. Renee remained a steadfast presence throughout these changes. She helped Nina select professional attire for job interviews, celebrated each milestone, and provided emotional support during difficult days. Their friendship deepened into something Nina had never expected to find during her transition: unconditional acceptance. The question of leaving town became less urgent. Nina had established a life here now, a job she enjoyed, an apartment decorated to reflect her personality, and most importantly, a friend who knew her complete story and valued her anyway. 6 months after their conversation at the coffee shop, Nina and Renee sat in Nina's living room, sharing pizza and wine on a Friday evening. Nina's brown hair, now her own, grown out over the months and professionally styled, caught the lamplight as she laughed at Renee's story about a particularly difficult client. I have something for you, Renee said suddenly, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small box wrapped in silver paper. A little celebration gift. What are we celebrating? Nina asked, accepting the package with surprise. 6 months of you living full-time as yourself, Renee explained. Half a year of authentic Nina. Touched by the gesture, Nina carefully unwrapped the gift. Inside lay a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a butterfly. Transformation, Renee explained as Nina lifted it from the box. Beautiful in every stage, but meant to fly freely in its true form. Tears welled in Nina's eyes as she fastened the necklace around her neck. The butterfly rested just below her collarbone, catching the light when she moved. Thank you, she whispered. For this, and for everything. Renee smiled, raising her wine glass in a toast. To Nina, she said simply. May your future be as authentic as you are. Nina touched the butterfly pendant gently, feeling its weight against her skin. Light, but present, like the identity she had fought so hard to claim. The navy blue dress hung in her closet now, a reminder of where she had started. Epilogue. A new beginning. In the quiet sanctuary of her home, Nina reflected on the extraordinary transformation that had taken place within her. From the timid days of justice, she had emerged as a resilient and liberated soul, ready to embrace the future. As she gazed at her collection of footwear, a symbol of her evolving identity, Nina's mind wandered through the arduous path she had traversed. Each step, carefully calculated, had brought her closer to this moment, a moment of authenticity and freedom. The sacrifices made were now mere memories, overshadowed by the brilliance of her newfound liberty. The white sandals, a token of friendship and self-acceptance, adorned her feet, serving as a constant reminder that courage and perseverance can overcome any obstacle. She no longer had to conceal her true self. Instead, she could soar above the shadows, fluttering with the grace and beauty of a butterfly finally set free. This was Nina's rebirth, a triumph over adversity. Every challenge encountered along the way had been a stepping stone towards this profound personal victory.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!